Okay. I want to go on to other news developments today. As you probably heard, the FBI has fired Peter Strzok over those texts.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's about time. I mean, the American people deserve an FBI that's not biased. They deserve an FBI that's going to focus on the truth. Obviously, Peter Strzok wasn't that individual. And I think it's important to understand he just wasn't any old agent at the FBI. He was deputy head of counterintelligence. More importantly, he was the lead agent on both the Clinton investigation and on the Trump-Russia investigation. So you now have at the FBI, Neil, something I've never seen in any federal agency. James Comey fired. Deputy Director McCabe fired. Jim Rubicki, former chief of staff, has left the FBI. Jim Baker, chief counsel at the FBI, was demoted, then fired. Lisa Page, FBI counsel, demoted, then left. And then, of course, you now have Peter Strzok, who was demoted and now fired today. These are the six key people at the top of the FBI who ran the Clinton investigation and who launched and ran the Trump-Russia investigation. I've never seen anything like that in any other federal agency.
You know, Strzok's attorney said that his client's firing was politically motivated, that his texts were unfairly taken advantage of, that they're protected by the First Amendment, and that was political free speech, you say?
I say, come on, this is the guy who said, we'll stop Trump. This is the guy who said we need an insurance policy. This is the guy who thought he was the James Bond of the FBI, the super secret agent man. So come on, that just doesn't fly. The American people understand it. And frankly, what we learned last week, Neil, from these email exchanges between Bruce Orr, a top official at the Justice Department, and Christopher Steele, the guy who wrote the dossier, I mean, this is amazing what we learned last week, where the Clinton campaign hires Fusion GPS to produce the dossier. Fusion hires Nellie Orr, Bruce Orr's wife. Bruce Orr then takes the dossier and gives it to the FBI. It is never supposed to operate that way in this great country. But that, in fact, is exactly what happened. And we got this confirmed just a few weeks ago when Peter Strzok was in front of our committee, and on the third round of questioning, I finally got him to admit, yes, the FBI was getting the dossier from Bruce Orr, whose wife was working for the Oppo research firm the Clintons hired. That's what was going on here, and this is as wrong as it gets. And now the lawyer for Peter Strzok is saying, oh, he shouldn't have been fired? You got to be kidding me. He should have been fired a long time ago, and thankfully it happened today.
You know, a lot of your colleagues are saying it's reason enough for the Bob Mueller investigation to be disbanded. Others say that it's best for the president not to comment on this matter at all. What do you say?
Well, here's what I know. A year and a half into this investigation, or 13, 14 months into this investigation, there is still not one bit of evidence about any type of coordination, collusion, or conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia to impact the election. But we do know that the Clintons hired the Perkins Coie law firm, who hired Fusion, who hired Christopher Steele, who worked with Nellie Orr, who gave information to Bruce Orr that was then given to the FBI to do what? To take this dossier, dress it all up, make it look like it was legitimate.
What really the Mueller folks are pondering right now. We have no way of knowing.
But we know this. We know that they took the dossier to the secret court to get a warrant to spy on the other campaign.
Would you be
that should be something we should investigate.
That says Mueller should shut the thing down?
I think it should be done as quickly as possible. I think it should have been done a long time ago, because, as I've said, we see no evidence of any type of coordination between the Trump campaign.
Do you think that the president should talk to Mueller?
You'd have to leave that up to the president and his lawyers. That is not a call for you or me to make, or frankly anyone. That's a call for the president of the United States.
Would you recommend that, or would that be a setup in your eyes?
I'll leave that to his lawyers. He's got smart lawyers working for him. If that's what they think needs to happen, they can do that. If they think it shouldn't, they shouldn't do it. That's their call. What I know is what we have discovered in our investigation, and what I also know is Rod Rosenstein has been dragging his feet, and it's time to give us everything. Why do we have to wait this long until last week before we ever saw Bruce Orr emails between Bruce Orr and Chris Steele?
So let me ask you real quickly, in the minute we have left, sir, if you'll indulge me. Omarosa with a tape, and multiple tapes, we're told, of Donald Trump on the heels of Michael Cohen, similarly taping a conversation with Donald Trump. What do you think of all that?
I mean, it sounds like she did some of this recording in a classified or secure setting, in a SCIF, as we say. You're never supposed to have any type of device in one of those type of rooms. I mean, every time we walk in for any type of briefing, we got to check our stuff at the door. So I think that's a problem in and of itself. And the fact that you would just record the people you work for, I mean, I just find that troublesome. So I'll leave it up to the White House, though, who's going to work for him, who's not.
All right. Congressman, thank you, and thank you for sticking around.
Bet.
We do appreciate that. Always good seeing you.
Thanks, Neil.
Report out tonight. I spoke to a number of FBI agents, former FBI agents, one in particular that worked for OPR. And we were talking and discussing about Peter Strzok and the fact that OPR was only going to give him a 60-day suspension, basically a slap on the wrist and demotion. And he was saying that it was incredible that FBI Deputy Director David Bowditch did the right thing. Remember, Peter Strzok was involved in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application that went before the secret court to spy on Carter Page. And the biggest part of this story that everyone's missing, this isn't about anti-Trump text messages. This is about the fact that they omitted and they withheld information from the court. That is a flagrant violation, they said, of the court and an abuse of the court. And this is probably the real reason why Peter Strzok was dismissed. You know, there's a lot of questions that are going to be coming out, particularly with Bruce Orr and his deposition. If he chooses not to turn up for the deposition on August 28th with Congress, he will be subpoenaed. But there are a lot of questions they're going to have for Bruce Orr about Peter Strzok and why so much information was withheld from the FISC court. And I think that's where this is going, Sean. That is going to be one of the biggest stories because withholding information is a violation that the FISC court just can't withstand.
I mean, that's the FISA court for those who don't. FISA court applications, FISC
Yep.
or FISA, two separate
court.
things, but the same thing. Let me go to the legality of this, Judge, and more importantly, how this would impact. He taints every single thing that supposedly Robert Mueller is looking into.
Exactly, and I talked about it in my open this week. If Robert Mueller's investigation is premised on Peter Strzok's information or lack thereof when he testified before Congress and said, I can't tell you this because the FBI wants me to keep it secret, and then when the FBI says you can talk, he says, I don't remember. If the basis of the FBI investigation is the fake counterintelligence investigation started by Peter Strzok, then Mueller goes down, any actions of Mueller goes down, and the whole investigation.
But the legitimacy has been questioned in the Manafort case and others, and because of the wide, deep mandate, was basically, investigate 2005 taxes that have nothing to do with Russia or the election.
Right.
It allowed for that.
They did allow for that, but you know, I'm a believer. I still think that hope springs eternal.
You're a believer? Really? You're a believer that investigations weren't fixed? You're a believer that FISA courts weren't lied to?
I am a believer that in the end, justice will be meted out.
If Hillary Clinton won, there would be no justice. We wouldn't even know this information.
You're right. You're right.
Lou.
We wouldn't know it, but what we do know right now is enough to make anyone's head spin. We know that this special counsel was conflicted from the very beginning. Mueller should never have been appointed. The special counsel should never have been created. And it's easy to lose sight of what this is all about. It starts really with Peter Strzok. He made the decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton.
With Comey, they were writing the exoneration in May.
He was leading the investigation. He helped James Comey write the letter that famously went from gross negligence, which was actionable on the part of the Justice Department guidelines, to extreme carelessness, which gave them a way out to avoid.
That's the legal standard to the non-legal standard.
But this is, again, Strzok. It is also Strzok leading the investigation when the FBI was in charge of the Russian collusion charge, and that narrative that laid the foundation for the special counsel.
And let me go to the start of where this all began, because we don't believe, sir, that it began as the left and the media has been advancing a narrative about George Papadopoulos and the Australian guy and meeting over drinks, and it just happened randomly. We believe it began way before, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I've spoken with George Papadopoulos' wife, Simona, and she testified before Congress, and she was emphatic before Congress, she told me, through the questioning behind closed doors, that there were so many players coming at her husband, you know, from Stephen Halper in Great Britain to Misfud, the professor, and all these people appeared to be giving information, trying to lure George Papadopoulos in, trying to give information that would eventually be able to be used against him by the FBI. And, you know, the special counsel went so far, Sean, as to threaten him. They threatened that they were going to charge him with being an Israeli spy. They kept threatening him over and over again until he pleaded guilty to one count of lying. Their lives have been ruined. But look, this is what the special counsel does. It has great expansive power, and that was given to them by Rod Rosenstein, who actually signed the 4th warrant on Carter Page to spy on him.
Well,
the president also tweeting today about another firing, one he believes was long overdue. The attorney for Peter Strzok says the FBI fired the special agent Friday over anti-Trump text he sent to his former lover, also at the FBI, during the 2016 campaign. This as the prosecution rests in the trial of Trump's former campaign chairman. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has our report from Alexandria, Virginia.
There's simply no evidence of bias in my professional actions.
FBI agent Peter Strzok, who was kicked off special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe for anti-Trump texts, was officially fired by the FBI Friday afternoon. Along with his former colleague and lover, FBI lawyer Lisa Page, the two exchanged thousands of texts where they criticized candidate Trump and his supporters. In a lengthy statement, Strzok's lawyer said the FBI's deputy director overruled the Bureau's disciplinary review that recommended a 60-day suspension and demotion, implying it was political. Quote, "This decision should be deeply troubling to all Americans. A lengthy investigation and multiple rounds of congressional testimony failed to produce a shred of evidence that Special Agent Strzok's personal views ever affected his work." Strzok testified under oath last month.
Not once in my 26 years of defending our nation did my personal opinions impact any official action I took. This is true for the Clinton email investigation and for every other investigation I've worked on. It is not who I am, and it is not something I would ever do.
Strzok's attorney singled out FBI Director Christopher Wray, alleging Strzok's termination was a departure from typical Bureau practice and contradicts Director Wray's testimony to Congress and his assurances. Wray laid out his approach at a recent national security conference.
I'm not going to make decisions based on yelling and screaming. I'm going to make decisions based on the process.
In a series of tweets, the president emphasized Strzok was a decision maker in the FBI's Russia and Clinton email cases. Just fired agent Strzok, formerly of the FBI, was in charge of the crooked Hillary Clinton sham investigation, he tweeted. It was a total fraud on the American public and should be properly redone. Though the attorney general recused himself from the Russia probe, a senior House Republican told Fox he can still take action.
Name an individual, perhaps a U.S. attorney, or even a retired U.S. attorney, to investigate this agency, to have full access, to have subpoena authority, and to get to the bottom and the top of all of this past misconduct.
The FBI declined to comment today on Strzok's termination, which is standard because the Bureau doesn't publicly discuss personnel matters, Brett.
You're at the federal courthouse there in Alexandria, where the Paul Manafort trial taking place. Some movement today.
Well, that's right, Brett. Just over an hour ago, the prosecution rested its case after calling two final witnesses, including a Treasury Department official who took the stand for a second time and testified that Paul Manafort and his business partner Rick Gates, the government's star witness, never filed paperwork to document the foreign bank accounts for their company. The judge said he was allowing the testimony, but warned the jurors that the government had the chance to indict Manafort's company and chose not to. Only Mr. Manafort is on trial, and we expect tomorrow morning to learn whether the defense will call its own witnesses and reveal its own evidence, Brett.
We'll follow all that tomorrow. Catherine, thank you.
Some breaking news for you into our newsroom right now. The FBI has fired embattled agent Peter Strzok over anti-Trump texts he exchanged with former FBI lawyer Lisa Page. As you know, the two were having an affair. And the controversy continues. Strzok, of course, helped lead the FBI's probe into the Russian interference ahead of the 2016 election. Strzok's attorney literally moments ago issuing a statement, and it reads, in part, the decision to fire Special Agent Strzok is not only a departure from typical Bureau practice, but also contradicts Director Wray's testimony to Congress and his assurances that the FBI intended to follow its regular process in this and all personnel matters. Joining me now to comment on this breaking news, Congressman Darrell Issa, a member of both the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee. What's your take on his firing? This is pretty big news.
It is, and hooray for an agency that finally did something right, which is recognize there's no place in the FBI for somebody whose bias, whose conduct, whose statements show that they were not willing to be fair and that, in fact, they compromise the very integrity or bring into question the integrity of the FBI. So hooray that they didn't wait any longer. They waited a long time.
Yeah, this is a 22-year veteran who displayed clear bias against Trump in those text messages. What took so long?
Well, the process of getting rid of anyone in federal government other than political appointees is long and laborious. They're usually covered by one or even two different protections, the Civil Service Act and unions. And the process goes on forever. And you might have noticed that at the IRS, people fired in the sort of Lois Lerner era were typically rehired, over 200 of them. So the process of firing them is long. The bars from rehiring generally aren't affirmative. And this is one of the problems in government. You know, the Congress acted specifically for the Veterans Administration to make it easier to fire people because our veterans were dying for lack of quality care. So it is a problem. It continues to be. But this is one of those cases in which the goods were on this individual in no uncertain way. And he had really brought shame on the FBI, an agency in which most agents keep their politics to themselves and keep their biases literally out of their conduct.
Well, with the exception of James Comey, of course.
I said most.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew exactly what you meant. He was integral to the Bureau for several reasons, but two major investigations. Obviously, the Russia investigation, which, again, there was bias there. And then also the Hillary Clinton email investigation. You know, Lindsey Graham has obviously come out and he says that there should be a second special counsel to oversee this because of the concern of the few bad eggs that you refer to in the FBI, that they feel maybe there is a bias here. By firing Strzok, does that perhaps qualm the concerns of the Mueller investigation being partisan?
No, you really can't do it that way. Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, did what he could do under the IG Act. But you do need somebody with subpoena authority, somebody that demands documents, many of them outside the Department of Justice and from former employees, to get to the bottom of it. You can't have an agency investigate itself effectively, but particularly when it's the agency that has all the power. You might remember that one of the things that Strzok did was he held on to his ability to personally declassify information, which meant he could leak information by declassifying it, making it public. He held on to a lot of those capabilities that helped him essentially create a legal way to spy on a candidacy of President Trump.
Does this further boost, then, Lindsey Graham's claim that he believes that a second special counsel should be appointed? Because let's remember, you need to have prosecutorial power in order to continue to, hold these people accountable. And there needs to be accountability here, and sadly, within the FBI itself.
Well, the Attorney General oversees all of these, and he has not recused himself from corruption and misconduct within his agency, Department of Justice. So it is completely within the ability of the Attorney General to name an individual, perhaps a U.S. attorney or even a retired U.S. attorney, to investigate this agency, to have full access, to have subpoena authority, and to get to the bottom and the top of all of this past misconduct. Without it, we, the American people, and even the president, can't have confidence in the Department of Justice, and we need that.
All right, Congressman Darrell Issa, thank you very much.